Well, good morning, Ascent. That's the point where you guys say, "Wow, good morning." Awesome. My name is Stuart, and I'm glad to be able to be here this morning, be able to share this morning with you. If you haven't had a seat yet, feel free to grab a seat. We're really all grateful to be able to share this morning together. Really, I'm glad that you chose to spend just a few moments with us. Our team has been here in anticipation of what's to come this morning. We've been thinking about this service, planning for a long time, and so we're grateful to be able to share it with you today. Now, I know for many of us, we live in this delusional world that we think summer's over. It's not, guys. It's 85 degrees, 90 degrees yesterday. Summer's going to be here for a little bit longer, right? And we look outside these walls and we see all the construction. We're going, it's closer and closer, and the end is almost there. We're almost to the end. We were almost about to cross that finish line. And for many of us, we can look at a day like that or look at this moment in time and go like, man, I am filled with excitement and wonder and just ready to take on the next few weeks and months as we head into the fall. And you're thinking about Christmas because it's 122 days from today. You can fact check me if you want. It's right. According to Google, that is, right? But there are many of us in this room too, and I'm not going to stand here and not be naive to the idea and the thought. There are many of us who are looking at this next week and this next month, and we are filled with anxiety about it. We are nervous for it. And we're like, how am I going to do this? And some of us are sitting in this room also this morning and going like, man, the last week has not been great. There's been some hard times about this last week. It's filled with a little bit of a pain and a little bit of uncertainty and a little bit of, oh man, did that really happen this week? And what's amazing and what's beautiful about this morning and right now and right here in this room is that this room is big enough to be able to hold both of those perfectly. And not only is this room big enough for that, but our God, who we serve and we love and we trust you will have an encounter with at some point in your lifetime, is bigger than that problem, bigger than that outlook, bigger than that moment, bigger than today, tomorrow, this week. That's what is amazing about what we do and what we are able to step into when we step into this room. We can hold both of those. And God is bigger than us. And He can hold both of those for us too. And there's a moment, there's probably some of you guys in this room is like, man, life feels pretty good. And so what I'm going to ask you is to hold it for the people around you. Because guess what? We don't know the story. We don't know what's happening in the world of the people sitting in front of you or right next to you. We don't know. And then maybe just a little part of us that goes, okay, God, I believe that you are great. And you are great in my life, in the lives of my family. And today I'm going to stand on behalf of those standing around us. So what we're going to do as a church family and body, we're going to actually stand up. We're going to sing this bridge and this chorus one more time. And I believe that these words will speak incredible power over each one of us. Maybe for ourselves, maybe for our own lives, as we sing these words and say these words out loud. Maybe it is just for us. Jesus, great are you. Great are you, Lord. And maybe we're singing it for the people around us today. Maybe you're singing it for the one sitting in front of you, next to you, around you. This band has been preparing and waiting for a long time to be able to lead us and go with us this morning. So we're going to ask them to come back in. And this few moments here together, we trust and pray that this would be a prayer for us. Not just words we say, a song we sing, but it would be a prayer for us all. That we would get a glimpse, that Jesus would send us and give us a glimpse of just how great He is. So will you join me? Will you join our band as we sing this little bit just one more time? Because I know they're excited to do it. So hopefully this morning you're excited to join in and sing with us as well. So let's do that, and then we'll come right back in just a moment.
And all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry. These bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise.
Yes, Lord. As before we say that, I'm going to read this passage over us. It's from Philippians 1, verses 3 through 6. In all my prayers for all of you, I always pray with joy because of your partnership in the gospel from the first day until now, being confident of this, that he who began a good work in you will carry it out to completion until the day of Christ Jesus. This morning, we get a chance to be able to live this out. We are so blessed, I would say, to be able to have in the room this morning a true partner in sharing the good news about this life-giving Savior whose name is Jesus. And I call her a partner, I call her a friend. Her name is Lindsey Heslop. She's right here, she's making her way up front. Welcome, Lindsey. We're so glad to be here. You may not know this face, or maybe you do. I will tell you that she is a dear friend of mine, not only mine, but a dear friend of Ascent. She's the associate pastor at Kindred Church, which meets on Wednesday nights in Westminster. And so we've been grateful to be able to partner with their church. They partner with us over the last number of years. And this morning, we truly get to partner with one another in this time. I will tell you that that Lindsey is a truly kind person, absolutely humble in what she does, and always welcoming to me and my family as well. She is a scholar with a desire and a heart to teach. And so this morning, I am so grateful to be able to share this stage with you, to be able to hear what you have to say, what the Lord is saying through you. So would you welcome Lindsey Heslop as you grab a seat this morning?
Oh my gosh, Stuart, thank you. He told me he would get to return the favor at one point, and that was incredible. Good morning, Ascent. It is so good to be with you this morning again. My name is Lindsey Heslop, and I am the associate pastor at Kindred Church. And I love that we have become really close friends over the last few years, and for the ways that our communities get to come together over things like the Christmas shop and the If Gathering for Women. Our churches are different in a lot of ways, but I really believe that we have a similar heartbeat. And so being here feels like a home away from home, and it is really always so special for me to get to spend some time with you. And so thank you for inviting me and for giving me such a warm welcome and for all of your hospitality. I do realize, though, for many of you, I may be an unfamiliar voice, and so I thought that it would be helpful if we just got to know each other a little bit before jumping in. And so this is going to require some audience participation, so please don't be shy. Okay, don't leave me alone up here, is what I mean to say. So by a show of hands, are there any other University of Colorado fans or alumni? Any Buffs people? You are my people. It is so nice to be among you, Go Buffs. My husband went to CSU. It is something we are working through, yes, still. But I really do think that I've won because we fly a CU flag in my front yard, and my son does not own one single CSU jersey. And so it's okay. If you're a Ram, I'm happy you're here. I would love to meet you, but go Buffs. Speaking of my family, here is a picture of my family. My husband, Cole, and I will be married 9 years this fall. And then this is our son, Sawyer, who just turned 2 this summer. Yeah, he's pretty cute. So our life is really busy and wild, but this stage is a blast. I want to just do one other quick poll, and really this is sort of so that I can get to know you. Okay, now I know that this can be a divisive topic, but I feel like this is a safe space, and so we're just going to go for it. So when it comes to chicken wings, okay, eating chicken wings, I need to know if you are the kind of person who thinks that the drumstick is the superior wing. Would you raise your hand? Okay. And then for those of us who are right and think that the flats are the only way to go, yes, there you are. Thank you for your honesty. Yes. So that's enough get to know me content for now. Let's jump into this series. So Whitney, your worship pastor, did a beautiful job last week of kicking off this new series all about worship. And she called out this common misconception I think that a lot of us carry, that worship is when we sing songs in church. And we can sort of opt in and opt out of worship depending on our preferences, if we're comfortable singing in public, or if we just have somewhere to be after church and we have to leave early. But what we're learning is that definition of worship is too narrow. It is not just an event that takes place for a few minutes during a church service or when you buy tickets when your favorite worship band is in town, but as Whitney put it, worship is a posture. It is a way of being. She said this that I thought was so good. She said, it is our whole life response to God. And she introduced us to the theme verse for this whole series. It's from a book of the Bible called Romans, written by a man named Paul to the ancient church in Rome, and it goes like this. And so, dear brothers and sisters, I plead with you to give your bodies to God because of all he has done for you. Let them be a living and holy sacrifice, the kind he will find acceptable. This is truly the way to worship him. So because of all he has done for you. So in other words, in response to who God is and what he has done, Paul writes, give your bodies to God. Right now that can sound a little strange, right? So I like how the Message version puts it because it explains what Paul is really getting at here. It says this, so here's what I want you to do, God helping you. Take your everyday, ordinary life, your sleeping, eating, going to work, and walking around life, and place it before God as an offering. And so this means respond to God with your whole life, not just the 15 minutes of music in church on a Sunday. Respond then too, but respond to God in your everyday life with what you do and where you go and how you live when you wake up and when you go to work and when you go to school and when you go to school pickup and when you go to dinner and when you call your parents and when you meet up with your friends and when you watch TV and when you scroll on social media. And so today we're going to keep talking about that. About the way that worship is demonstrated, the way it is acted out in our everyday, ordinary life. And then I want to zoom in on one very actionable way that we can respond to who God is and all he has done that has absolutely nothing to do with singing or worship or music. Okay, I want to begin with a question. And I would guess that this question has likely crossed your mind before, or a question like it has. And if it hasn't yet, well, where better to talk about life in such an honest way than church? Okay, and the question is, what was I made for? What was I made for? Right, we're often moving so quickly through life that we don't slow down nearly enough to pay attention to such an existential question. But I have found that when we are confronted by how fragile life really is, or when suffering rips through our life, or when we have endured disappointment after disappointment and we feel like nothing is working out the way we thought, we might start to wonder, what is the point? Like, what is the point of it all? Maybe you are in a season like that now, and so this question is not very far from your mind. Or it could be a moment of intense joy and gratitude that brings this question up for you, like the sound of waves crashing or listening to your kids laughing with their grandparents. Or what always gets me is being at the airport. Right? All these people that I don't know with their own stories and their own histories, and we're all going somewhere for our own reasons, and being in such a crowd of people always makes me think, like, what are we really all doing here? What is this really all about? Right, maybe the airport one is just me. But what was I made for? Right, even Barbie found herself asking this question, and it became the hit song of last summer, winning all kinds of Grammys because I think it struck a chord, saying out loud maybe what we have all secretly wondered. And well, here are some of the ways that the world and culture has tried to answer that question. We're going to go through just a few. Right, the first is that I was made for thinking, right? Or I am what I think. That the goal in life is just to obtain more knowledge, more information, more intelligence. This view gives a lot of weight and value to ideas that I am my thoughts. That if I just think the right things, or if I think a certain way, then things will work out. Another one is that I was made for consuming, or I am what I buy. Right? This is what every marketing and ad agency wants us to believe about who we are, that being able to buy this kind of car or this kind of house says this thing about me. That the aim and goal is to be able to afford certain products or brands that would make a statement about who I am. One we see all the time now is that I was made for pleasure, or I am what I feel. Right? This view leads us to chasing endless happiness, that life is all about finding the next thrill or the next high. Right? This is a YOLO way of moving through life because, well, if you only live once, well, then you better go big and you better experience all there is under the sun. Here are just a few others before we move on. Right? That I was made for success, or the idea that I am what I achieve, or I was made for working, that I am what I do. Isn't this how we often define ourselves? When someone asks us about us, we usually begin with our job or what we do. We say, well, I'm a teacher, or I'm retired, or I'm a nurse, or I'm a mom. In this way, life can become all about the next promotion, the next milestone. We clock in and clock out, and we get it up, and we do it all again the next day. And then when we lose our job, or our kids go off to school, or we finally reach the age of retirement, we go, well, what was I made for if not to work, if not for this? Right? Well, the story of the Bible gives us a very different answer. The story of the Bible tells us that we were made for worship, that I was made for worship, that I am what I love. See, everyone worships something. It's part of our nature as human beings. And even if we wouldn't consider ourselves a person of faith or a Christian, we all still worship something. And many of us who do call ourselves Christians worship something other than Jesus. Paul says it this way at one point. They traded the truth about God for a lie. And so they worshiped, they loved, and served the things that God created instead of the Creator himself, who is worthy of eternal praise. Amen. Right? And the shift can be subtle, but it happens. That our attention and our devotion and our time and energy and love is captured by something or someone else, and it will inevitably influence and shape our decisions and our choices and ultimately who we are becoming. I think about the way we use this word worship when we're not talking about faith. We say things like, he worships the Broncos, right? Or she worships Taylor Swift. I threw that one in just to annoy Whitney for later, right? They worship the ground he walks on, right? We use this word worship to describe devotion, to describe the way that what we love begins to shape everything else about us and about our life. It dominates our conversations. It dictates how we spend our money and our time. It becomes the thing that people know about us or identifies us before they know anything else. When you love something, you start to take on its characteristics. Right? This is why every Friends-obsessed millennial at one point in their life had the Rachel haircut. Right? Even if it did not suit us, we got it. Right? The Bible describes it this way. Guard your heart above all else, for it determines the course of your life. So there is a clear connection between what is in your heart and then what happens out here in your everyday walking around life. And so what is in your heart? What is shaping your motivation and your plans and your will? Right? Even our love of good things can eclipse our love of Jesus. And then those things become what is informing our decisions and our choices. And so it's not the Spirit any longer that's directing our life, but it's our love of comfort, or our love of security, or our love of staying young, or our love of legacy. Author James K.A. Smith takes this verse from Proverbs and puts it very, very plainly. We become what we worship because we worship what we love. Now, this is not all bad news. The upside to this whole you are what you love thing is that when we love Jesus, when he is the object of our devotion and our attention and all of our affection, when he is what we worship, when Jesus is the thing we love most, we become more like him. And the secret is not just trying harder to be more like Jesus, or if you do these things, or if you keep these rules, or if you obey this set of behaviors, you become more like Jesus. But it starts with what is in your heart. What is it that you feel for Jesus? Is it love? Maybe it's not. Or maybe it's fear. Fear because the Jesus you've heard about is watching your every move and counting every time you step out of line, waiting to punish you. Maybe it's not love, maybe it's disgust. Because the Jesus that you've heard about doesn't like or want or accept these kind of people. Maybe it's indifference or apathy because he just doesn't seem to make much of a difference in the lives of people you know. Maybe you are still figuring out what it is you feel for Jesus. And that's okay. I would say keep going. Keep figuring that out. But we were made to worship. So it's not a matter of if we worship, but what we worship. And we really won't be at rest until our heart is able to connect with what we were made for, with our Creator. I want to point us back to the very beginning, to the part of the Bible where God is in creation mode, where he is making things, because I think it reveals an important piece of this puzzle that will help us answer that fundamental question. This is from Genesis chapter 1. Then God said, "Let us make human beings in our image, to be like us. They will reign over the fish in the sea, the birds in the sky, the livestock, and all the wild animals on the earth, and the small animals that scurry along the ground." Then God blessed them and said, "Be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and govern it. Reign over the fish in the sea, the birds in the sky, and all the animals that scurry along the ground." Now, I want us to notice two things about what we were made for from these verses: reflection and representation. Right? One, we were made to reflect God. This is what he means when he says, "Let us make human beings in our image." The triune God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, all present for creation, all there, all taking part, share their likeness with us, imparting some of these qualities and characteristics with us. This is what sets us apart from the rest of creation. So now, like God, we are creative. We have the ability and the capacity to make things, to create. We also have agency like God, meaning we have decision-making power. We have the ability to choose and to act. We, like God, have the capacity for love and community and relationships. These things about us, about human beings, reflect God. And two, we were made to represent God to the rest of creation. He gives us this responsibility that we were given to reign and rule and govern, to be in charge of the fish and the birds and the livestock. This means that God shares some of his authority with us. He says, "Go and spread out and expand. I want you to be my representatives to the rest of the world." Now, this all goes a little sideways in a few chapters, and we do get a little lost. But God's desire, his intention, his dream for us has not changed. We still image God. We still represent his way of life to the world. And we do this, we reflect and represent God all the time. This is not something that we just clock into at 10 a.m. on a Sunday morning and then clock out of at 11 a.m. when we get back in our cars and go home. But we are reflecting and representing God when we're at home with our kids, when we're at school with our friends, when we're at the office with our coworkers, when we're at the nursing home visiting our parents. Worship is any time that we reflect and represent God. This is why Paul talks about worship as this everyday walking around, eating, sleeping, getting up, and going to work thing. It is a 24/7 reality. It is a way of being in the world, no matter where you are. And so the more and more that I thought about reflecting and representing God, I kept coming back to this word, witness. I think in part because of all the recent crime documentaries and series that I have been watching, but this is how a witness, right, is meant to function in a courtroom or in a case, right? To witness, right? The verb, it means to see something take place. It means to have knowledge from personal observation or experience. And so a witness is meant to reflect and represent someone's character, or to represent an event that has happened in their personal experience or point of view. And so before what I do now, I was a youth pastor for years. And on one occasion, I remember that I was asked to be a character witness for one of my students, that I had to appear in court with them, which was very intimidating for me. I have to keep reminding myself, like, I am not on trial. I am here for someone else. But it's a very intimidating environment. But I was meant to give a witness statement for who I knew this student to be. I was there to represent who this student really was. Not what this choice said about them, but to represent my personal knowledge and experience of their character, and to reflect a reality about this student that without my statement, maybe that judge would have never seen or never known. And I think that our lives are meant to do something similar when it comes to God, when it comes to worship, to reflecting and representing who he is and what he has done and what he is able to do. We were made to witness the love of God and the hope of his kingdom. No matter what your age or your station in life, no matter what your circumstances are, no matter what you do to earn a paycheck, no matter what you feel your purpose or passion is in life, whether you are 5 or 15 or 50, whether you are working your dream job or just trying to get by, whether you are single or married or parenting or not, we were each made to reflect and represent to our corner of the world the love of God that we have come to know personally, and to represent the hope of his kingdom. Right now, I realize that this word witness, right, it carries some negative connotations, especially in church world. Right, if you grew up in 90s youth group culture, anyone, you are having some scary flashbacks. And it's okay. Like, I promise this is not going to get weird. Right, but you might be knocking on doors or talking to strangers or street evangelism or picket signs. Right, what am I really talking about when I say witness? Well, I think this verse out of 1 Peter explains it best. It goes like this: "But in your hearts, revere Christ as Lord. Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope that you have. But do this with gentleness and respect." Right, now notice where Peter begins, right, with what's in your heart. with what is in your heart. Other translations of this verse use the word worship instead of the word revere. So he's saying to love, to worship Christ in your heart. Love Jesus, know him, admire him, be devoted to him. All worship begins with what we love. And the next he says, be prepared to give a reason for your hope, a reason for the hope that you have. And I love that. Isn't that such a refreshing way to think about what it means to witness, right? To evidence who God is and what he has done in your life, to speak about our personal experience and knowledge of God, of his hope and his forgiveness and his salvation and his mercy. Peter gives us these two categories when it comes to witness that I want to spend the rest of our time exploring before we wrap up. And because I was a communication major and I love a good alliteration, they both start with the letter W to go with witness. So the first one is our words. Right, our words. Peter gives us some conditions for when and how we use our words. Right, first, we use our words to explain our reason for the hope we carry. So we are not saying words about somebody else's sin. This is not an explanation about why somebody else needs Jesus and where they are failing. This is not words about why so-and-so over there just doesn't get it. This is about the hope you carry, no one else. Right? And Peter says, share the reason you have hope to get up and face tomorrow. Right? You don't have to share all the theological proof that you think will convince someone that you're right. This doesn't have to be a well-thought-out argument with bullet points or what your parents believed or your grandparents believed. This is your reason for hope, what you have experienced from God. And then he emphasizes that we give our explanation for hope when we are asked. When we are asked, not by pushing it on someone when they really aren't interested, or by cornering someone at dinner or at coffee, not with combative comments on Facebook or by yelling it at other people on the street corner. And so here is what this might look like, to witness Jesus with your words. Right? When your friend, who maybe just became a new mom, texts you at 3 a.m., how did you do this? How did you survive the overwhelm and the anxiety of postpartum? Well, you explain your reason for hope, right? That Jesus' grace is what made up for all the times you felt like you were failing and gave you strength to just do the next right thing, and that his peace was the only way to fight off those twisty thoughts that come in the middle of the night when no one else is awake. His grace and his peace are my reason for hope. Or when it's been a year of tragedy, maybe, and sickness, and diagnoses, and doctor's appointments for someone you love, and a coworker asks, like, how are you coping with this? How are you making it through life at all right now? You explain your reason for hope, that even if you never understand why this has happened to you or to your loved one or your family, Jesus promises to not waste 1 ounce of your pain, not one of your tears. So even if you never get a reason, you know it will be used somehow. It will be repurposed for good. And maybe when you are caring for your aging parents and you're watching them decline, and the nurse at the facility where they live asks you how you're doing when you go to visit, you give your reason for hope, that with Jesus, what's coming, that death is not the end, but it is the beginning of eternity, that what it looks like loss, my parents, the people I love, gain perfection and the peace of heaven. We can witness the kingdom of God with our words when we are asked. It just means to give a reason, an explanation for why you are able to move through life with any sense of hope. And then Peter talks about wonder. Wonder. Secondly, and just as importantly, Peter says to do this, to give this explanation with gentleness and respect. That instead of jumping to judgment or to arrogance, that we lead with curiosity and humility, which is what I would call wonder. Right? Jesus led most of his conversations with questions. When he calls the first of his few disciples, they're following him and wondering what he's up to. He turns to them and he says, "What do you want? What do you want?" And then from that story, way back in Genesis, when the first humans, right, when they messed this thing up that God had designed for them, God comes to them and he asks them a question, right? Where are you? And who told you? What if we led with curiosity and humility instead of arrogance, instead of shame, instead of with conflict? I remember the way that Paul talks about our worship in that Romans 1:12 verse, when he says, we do this, we give our life to God as an offering. Well, I wonder what would happen if we treated our witness, our words, our reason for hope with the same posture, as an offering, as just something that we put out into the world, and that we let God do whatever it is that he wants to do with it. It's not something we use to try and control others, or to win an argument, or to boost our ego. But our words and our wonder, they will be evidence of the love of Jesus in our own life. And our reason for hope, our curiosity, our gentleness, our kindness, it will witness the knowledge of God's love. And it will reflect and represent his kingdom, that there is something else he can offer to the world. This is what a life of worship is meant to demonstrate. Our whole life, not just our Sunday morning, but how we parent our kids and how we care for our neighbors and how we treat especially our enemies, is meant to witness. It is meant to serve as evidence, as knowledge and personal experience of the hope of resurrection, hope that we can have peace amidst anxiety and worry and overwhelm, that we can have comfort in the midst of heartbreak and pain, hope that there really is life after death. This is what we were made for, to worship, to reflect and represent our good and generous and faithful God. This is what you were made for, Ascent. Would you pray with me? God, I am thankful that you are good, that you are gentle and patient. God, that you love us, God, and that you desire to know us, that you want to share who you are with us, God, and that you desire for us to love you back. And so, God, I pray this morning that that would be where we would start, that we would be honest and brave and discerning, asking ourselves, what is it we feel for Jesus? And if it's not love, why is that? And could we one day love him? And what might that take? God, I pray that anyone who walked into this room feeling a sense of discouragement or disillusionment or boredom, God, that what is life all about? What was I made for? God, that you would encourage us. We were made to reflect you, that we image you. We have pieces of who you are in us already. And that, God, you are so generous to share your authority with us, that you want us to take part in what you are doing, to rule and reign and govern and represent this kingdom that is like nothing else we know to the world. And so, God, help us to evidence to prove, to reveal who you are by how we live. Not just here for an hour on Sundays, but in our everyday, ordinary walking around life. Help us to do that, God, with our words and with our wonder. Jesus, we love you and we need you. And I pray this in your name. Amen.